And then what if you have a flawed business model? It doesn't work. How do you plan for that? Sometimes you can plan for it, sometimes you can't. How do you navigate these rough waters? And I've given you these examples. The dot-com bust, investor money dried up in 2000. I was with a dot-com company. I left practicing law in late 1998, went with a George Soros-backed company, and was the CFO and general counsel of this startup. And at the time I joined, there were about 26 people in the company. But the management team seemed to be really strong. Their focus was trying to sell the company. They basically bought this company from InfoSeek, which was one of the search engine companies out of Palo Alto back in the 1990s. And they bought the commercial information division, and it had a great idea, but the business model was flawed. So when I got there, I looked at the projections, and it was the hockey stick, and there was no money coming in. And I'm the CFO. Literally for a week straight, I stayed up 20 to 22 hours a day trying to figure this out. And I was perplexed because the former CFO who they fired really had made a mess. It was a complete mess. He hadn't kept payroll properly. There were no books and records. There was nothing. First we built the books and records. This is how I know how to run a startup. I ran a startup. I started cleaning up the mess of somebody else. And this was an operating business that was backed by George Soros, who's a multi-billionaire that doesn't put up with this kind of crap. And we had his chief lieutenants on our board of directors. So we had to clean it up. And then we had to come up with a business model. And it was early 2000 when I realized, and I read an essay by Warren Buffett that was in the Washington Post about how he gave the final exam to his MBA students at Wharton in an entrepreneurship class. And he said, gave facts about a company that was like my company. Advertising-based model. The number of clicks is what it's worth. Remember that?
Yeah.
Were you doing valuations back then?
I was, yeah. Scary times.
Page views dictated what the fair market value of the company was. There was no PE multiple because there was no E. There were no earnings.
There was no R.
There was no R. There was no revenue. It was a concept. I read this essay and he said, at the end of the article, he said, anyone who gave me an answer other than to say that the company was worth zero, I failed. Cash is king. If it doesn't generate cash flow, it's not worth anything. Now, he's been proven wrong over time, but not really. Look at Berkshire Hathaway. Look what he's done and how he's focused on cash flow as being the primary indicator of the value of a real business. Now, we do have businesses that have patents, that have unique processes, that are worth something, that somebody will pay a very high strategic value that may be 10 times revenue, which I've seen. But those are the few and the far between. So when the dot-com bust came, it was devastating. I had gotten out of this company, gone back into practicing law, and I was representing this company and a lot of other technology companies. Disappeared. What does a lawyer do? You change your business model. When the passive loss rules came in, I changed what I was doing. When the real estate bust hit, I changed what I was doing. I adapted. If you're adaptable and you're capable of adapting, you'll succeed. A lot of people failed though. A lot of people went out of business. Recession, same effect. Did anybody see The Big Short? Great movie. And it's, a little hyped up, but it's very accurate to what happened. Wall Street run amok without regulation. Flawed business models, we're going to talk about two in particular. And then mismanagement, failed law firms. Finley Cumble, which we affectionately called Finley Crumble. Anybody remember that law firm? Anybody hear of a guy named Bowie Kuhn? Did you ever hear that guy's name? He was the Major League Baseball commissioner back in the 70s. And he ended up becoming one of the named partners in this Finley Cumble law firm. And again, they expanded too fast. without really any kind of financial controls in place. And they're the classic example of a firm that grew from like 30 lawyers to almost 1,000 lawyers and then blew apart. A lot of law firms have failed over the last 10 years. Howery and Simon, anybody know that firm? Very strong in the intellectual property litigation space. Again, grew very fast, very aggressive, paid partners who were bringing their business on board guaranteed payments, but not all the revenue came with them. I mean, how dumb is that? These are lawyers who represent, well, I guess they weren't very good businessmen. So, and then industry change. Things that you can't prevent, like the government shutdown, which has affected many of my clients over the years who are small government contractors in certain areas of government contracting. They've always been impacted by industry change. How do you mitigate this downside effect of an economic downturn or an industry change? Well, as my wife tells me, she's a CFO of a small government contractor who's been affected by the government shutdown and has tried to create new business models, and she's constantly fighting with the founder, which we'll talk about in a second, as the type of a person that certain entrepreneurs are, where they lose focus, so they like to do things that take the company off track. Watch your debt. Always watch your debt. We should be doing that personally. It's something that we should be advising all of our clients daily. Do not take on too much debt. Take on what you can afford. Manage your cash flow by correlation. That's a corollary to watching your debt. Manage your cash flow. Make sure you've got plenty of cash flow for the rainy day fund and then for the things that you're planning on doing. But if you go out and you spend your money as fast as you make it, you're not managing your cash flow. Which is the corollary to that is maintain reserves of cash. Maintain enough in reserve so that you can anticipate obsolescence of equipment, refreshing your retail operations, whatever it is that you need to do. You have to have reserves, whether you're using your debt facility to do that or your own cash to do it. As I've learned, be adaptable. You have to be able to adapt to changing circumstances. Protect your assets. How you own your assets and how you can protect them is a rather interesting seminar that we could do a couple of different seminars on it, asset protection. It's using trusts, limited liability companies, corporations, who are the owners, shifting ownership to people that you can trust. But if you shift ownership and you really want to protect your assets, you've lost control of that asset. So you have to weigh the pros and the cons of that. Some people think, well, I can use this asset protection device and still get all the benefits of the asset and have total control over it. It doesn't work that way. That's not the way asset protection really works. And then, of course, minimize your risk. Avoid personal guarantees. Avoid co-signing on debt with other people if you can. Competition and theft. So I want to talk about non-competes, non-solicitation agreements, non-disclosure agreements, and non-interference agreements. But what these things do is it protects you as the business owner from having somebody leave you and take your clients and take your employees. Again, every business owner should have this. And every buyer who's looking at a seller is demanding that their businesses have every employee locked up under some form of non-interference agreement, if you will. In Virginia, I'll get to that. Trademark and service mark, patent protection, copyright, trade secret. Which of these items in that list are not protected under federal registration? Anybody? Which of these items in that second bullet list are not protected by virtue of a federal registration?
Trade secret.
Trade secrets are not protected. How do you protect trade secrets? Anyone? By agreement. That's how you protect it. Now there is a Federal Trade Secrets Act, and there are trade secrets laws in every state, but it only provides so much protection. And what is a trade secret? So it's best if you enter into an agreement that defines what is really important to you, which should be held in confidentiality, or proprietary. And those items, whatever they are, including customers' names and lists, are your trade secrets. And how you do things, how you do training, how you sell products, your processes that you've built at the infrastructure stage in launching your business. How do you do that in a way that you can protect it as best as possible? If you have a good, well-drafted agreement, it will protect the trade secret because we've litigated those cases and we've won it on behalf of our clients. It's expensive to litigate, but if the trade secret's worth enough and it needs protection, then it's worthy of litigating.